Chess friends, I hope you are doing well. Today, I have the Super Chess Grandmaster Garry Kasparov, who is a Russian chess grandmaster, former world champion, political advisor and writer. His peak FIDE rating was 2851, and he is an amazing player worldwide. Today, I played against him and employed the Evans Gambit, and I made a separate video about the Evans Gambit, explaining how you can create chess traps and tactics with it on my other channel. You can watch that video after this one. So, let's get started without wasting any time. I started the game with e4, and after e5 knight f3 knight f6, and bishop to c5 occurred in the game. Here, I played my brilliant move, b4, employing the Evans Gambit. Of course, two pieces can capture the pawn. If the bishop takes b4, which Garry Kasparov actually did, you can play c3. Garry has two major options to consider, whether to play bishop a5 or bishop c5. If bishop a5 is played, you can play d4. After the capture, you can castle short. Leaving the pawn unguarded, Garry might feel confident seeing this move, thinking, wow, I've won 3 pawns in the opening, and I might lead the game and defeat Stockfish, just as I defeated Deep Blue 20 years ago. But no, Garry Kasparov, it's not that simple. Here, black has 3 major options, as indicated by my arrows: pawn takes c3, bishop to b6 or knight to f6. I discussed these on my other channel. Let me show you the variation. If black plays knight to f6, you can play bishop to a3, exerting control over the diagonal. After d6, e5, and knight to e4, attacking the pawn. You can capture the d6 pawn. Then, after a rook check, the king has to move, and the knight becomes very restricted. Next, queen to b3 will threaten the pawn on f7, queen f6, followed by knight d2, puts black in a tricky position. How should black play here? The pawn is under attack, the bishop cannot move, and moving the rook is not a good option. The only decent move for black is g5, then after knight e4, the queen moves, and after a series of exchanges, bishop takes f6, attacking the queen. You can see how my 3 pieces on the king side are dominating the board. Some decades ago, Garry Kasparov played a game where his knight was an octopus knight, dominating the center. Now, 20 years later, I am attacking Garry Kasparov with my 3 octopus pieces, and he is vulnerable. Even after the queen moves, knight checks, captures and recaptures, the bishop is still protected. The queen needs to flee, trying to avoid exposure. Queen takes b7 will attack the knight, and after the knight moves, you can capture the pawn on d6, the rook has open lines, and the position will be over for black. Do you believe me? After knight checks, knight takes e7 will come with the idea of attacking the black king, and the game will be over. I won't show you more variations until black gets checkmated. Returning to the position, we discovered the move knight to f6. In our actual game, Garry Kasparov didn't play bishop a5, he had watched my video on the Evans Gambit and knew there were traps in this variation, so, he didn't play bishop c5 either because there are also tactics and traps there. Instead, he played bishop to d6, a prophylactic move and a new variation. We then played d4. As I always say, no matter what your opponent plays, the core tactics are the same and universally applicable. d4 occupied the center, and after the knight moved, castling occurred. The pawn on e4 was left unguarded, but can you capture it? If you dare, I will capture e5. After the exchange, rook to e1 will attack the knights. The knights will be vulnerable because knight takes bishop will be met by knight takes e4, and I can win your knight with a discovered check on the black king. Even if the black king goes on vacation to escape the stress, you can capture the knight, protecting the bishop and attacking the knight. With 3 minor pieces, I will lead and win the game. So, let me share a motivational quote in sudden with you. In a few months, your life will be completely different. Keep working for your goals and watch as your dream life unfolds. Returning to the review, we see that knight takes e4 is a bad choice. That's why Garry Kasparov played short castling here. What was his plan? A few moves later, it became clear that he wanted to play bishop b7 to attack the center, as the pawn on d7 lacks protection. This would also free and activate his bishop, after my bishop moved back to a2, preparing to go to b1, queen c2 could also join the attack, targeting the dark squares, bishop g5 could attack the knight, and my knight could maneuver to a5, attacking the king side. These ideas are possible in my games. After my knight moved a3, black's best move was bishop to e7. But Garry Kasparov made a blunder. He made some coffee, and when I played bishop to c4, attacking his bishop, he spilled coffee on his jacket. His dark squared bishop was going to be lost. Without it, it would be difficult for him to defend the dark squares, and my dark squared bishop would dominate. After knight h4, threatening knight f5, his king side would be paralyzed by my attack. After capturing f5, and as the queen moved back, I captured d4. You can see how my pawns control the center like bodyguards. Preventing black from making any progress, bishop takes h6 will ruin his position, and bishop b1 will attack from the diagonal, as it did in our game. As the knight moved back, I played rook a3, gaining control of the g3 file. Black's position became vulnerable because no pieces could defend it. This is the beauty of the Evans Gambit. It sacrifices a pawn to gain central control, slowly but surely gaining access to key files with the rook, advancing the e5 pawn, and positioning the queen on the h5 diagonal. Bishop takes h6 followed by knight g7 will finish the game. This position is completely over. Do you know why? I played a brilliant move here. Can you guess what it was? Use your brain and think. The brilliant move, which Garry Kasparov also speculated about, is bishop takes h6, sacrificing the bishop. After the exchange, knight takes h6, the rook holds the g file, and the position will be completely over for Garry Kasparov. Going back to the position, we discovered that playing queen to f6 was a very bad choice, which is why we just played a5. Here, I made another brilliant move, knight takes h6. Whenever you get the chance to sacrifice your piece on the king side, you should do so, especially when your bishops are dominating the position. In this case, the rook can come to g3, the queen can move to h5, and the rook is under attack. This position is completely lost for Garry Kasparov. Garry resigned because he had no options left in this position, even if the king moves, with the rook here and the queen on h5, after e5, you can see that the black king is completely vulnerable. Black has no defense left, and after capturing the rook, checkmate becomes almost inevitable. A few moves later, I checkmated Garry Kasparov. This is the beauty of the Evans Gambit. If you haven't watched my video on the chess tactics and traps in the Evans Gambit on my other channel, you can go and check it out. I hope you enjoyed the game. If you did, don't forget to like and subscribe to my channel. Wishing you all the best. Take care and see you soon.